Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hello, and welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. So today, I have as my guest Lauren Schneider, and Lauren is the author of this book, Tarotpy. Am I saying it correctly?
You are.
Yes. Okay. So Lauren created this. It's a form of therapy that relies on tarot, and it fascinates me. I've been someone who's been doing tarot for a very long time. That doesn't mean I'm great at it. It just means I do it. But it's not, I don't do it the way Lauren does it. She does it not as a predictive kind of thing, but as simply carrying a very important message to her client. Is that fair to say, Lauren?
Yes, it's well, first of all, when I developed therapy, I developed it when I was in a master's program. I began experimenting with what would happen if I applied family systems, hypnotherapy, archetypal psychology, dream work to playing with the cards. And somebody had handed me cards before back to school, and I did not know what these things were. I did not know about divination. I did not read about the tarot tradition or the meaning of symbolism. And I just began to discover that the cards that somebody would pull would reflect them like a mirror, would reflect exactly what was going on with them. Reading the images kind of like a dream, without not approaching them with a preconceived idea, but noticing details in the image, asking the client about the details, and discovering that the details absolutely brought up whatever the issue was immediately.
And one of the things I know about tarot is the incredible synchronicity of it. I remember many years ago, I was in the Bodhi Tree. I don't think that store still exists, but a woman, no, but it was amazing, very woo woo store. And a woman was interested in tarot. I was looking at something and she said, "Do you know anything about tarot?" And I said, "I know a little bit." And she said, "I'm trying to decide whether I want to look at this or not." And so there was a nearby deck, and I just held it and I said, "Pick a card." She picked a card, and I said, "Okay, this card can mean da 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 da." I don't remember what the message was. And this woman threw up her hands and said, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly the question I had. And you just gave me the answer. I'm doing this thing." And I know you see this all the time in your work, right, Lauren?
All the time. So that's why I stopped essentially doing traditional psychotherapy, because I found that therapy, which also uses oracle cards, dream cards, whatever symbolic imagery deck people are attracted to, um, I just discovered that it gets right to the heart of the issue in one session, and that it gives people those synchronicities are so amazing. It fills people with awe and excitement. It activates the unconscious, and the images stimulate imagination so that these creative solutions and insights happen spontaneously. So I was getting in one session what would take months to years of traditional therapy.
Wow.
And yeah,
Yeah, that says a lot. Yeah.
yeah. So at a certain point, it felt like, doing dream work and therapy really was accessing the client's unconscious resources and their inner wisdom. And I'm just really good at tracking it and then reflecting it with them. So I stopped doing traditional psychology, even though therapy is a complete integration of psychotherapy and
So you
tarot
use
oracle.
you yeah, you use all the tools that you've been taught, that you've learned, and integrate them with this system. I want to
Yeah.
ask you before we go on, because I know I'm going to get to hear some stories. about clients and the changes for them. What about you, Lauren? How has following this way of practicing therapy affected you, changed you?
It's such a beautiful question. So when I was being trained in 1983, I was in a master's for family systems. I was not taught Jungian psychology. I was not taught depth psychology. At that time, I didn't know anybody was integrating spirituality or mysticism with psychotherapy. So I just started, as I said, to experiment. And therapy trained me as a depth psychologist. I changed. I went deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding the nature of psyche. And also, it brought me to a point where, first of all, it heightened my intuition, which it will do for clients. So I never thought of myself as psychic, and it just kept developing my trust in intuition, my trust in the client's wisdom, learning that I was tracking somebody's unconscious wisdom and bringing it out for them on the table, and trusting the images. I don't have to figure out how to heal somebody. I don't have to figure out what they need. I see what's going on immediately when we begin to reflect on the cards together. But let's say somebody has a real trauma and it'll come up in a card. And they feel just like they're looking at that card and it feels really uncomfortable and traumatizing to them, and they can't get the wisdom of it. So I'll simply say, you can pick another card. You can change the cards you're dealt, in therapy and in life. So pick another card to ask, what would this look like if it were evolved, if it were healed? And we'll have them pick cards until they can see what it's like healed. And then they will be able to follow that image to help them transform. And I see these powerful shifts in one session. So I carried a very heavy sense of responsibility when I was doing traditional psychotherapy, which I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us, I know I was trained to be a psychotherapist in my family by the time I was 3, dealing with a dramatic, crazy family system. And many of us as therapists carry the kind of responsibility where we feel like, particularly if somebody's in extreme distress, where we have to help them, heal them, rescue them. And that brought me to a point of burnout, finally, in 2017. And I had a very powerful dream. And it said, if I don't stop practicing in this way, it will kill me. And I walked away from my practice for 3 years. I wrote the book, which was 40 years of my experience of doing therapy. And when I came back to just doing therapy and dream work, doing therapy as dream work, as a consultant, as a trainer, as a teacher, I just felt joy, because that sense of overwhelming responsibility is completely deactivated when I do therapy. I just trust the process. I trust what unfolds between myself and the client. There's always, as you said, these incredible synchronicities.
So let me see if I can kind of just make this very simple, and then you correct me if I haven't got it right, because I'm trained in family systems as well. I was a family therapist, but I ended up working in the field of addiction, which is a great place to look at family therapy. Family therapy basically is dealing with how the individuals in a family affect one another, what the responses are, what the secrets are, all that sort of thing. But what you're doing, Lauren, if I'm getting it, is you're bringing in this deeply spiritual aspect of life, which involves our life path, the influences that are much greater than the personality that affect us, where we are on that path, the guidance that we've had, the guidance that we're receiving now, the guidance we can look forward to getting, that sort of thing. So it just makes it so much bigger and more personal and yet more universal. Am I getting close to it?
You said it beautifully.
Okay.
It is, we will see the family dynamics in a layout. But it also brings in this higher consciousness. So it's like the soul's path, your unique path is laid out on the table. And there's always this guidance that shows what the next indicated step is, what the block is. And we use images. Well, images are the language of the unconscious. So we're speaking directly to the unconscious and to the soul when we're working with these images. But also, I believe that we have images before we actually create something in the world. First, it's an image. So that these images are giving us and showing us the path of who we truly are. And the same images that come in dreams that know who we are and who we're meant to be, like our blueprint, that same intelligence comes out in the therapy images, even though they're randomly chosen.
So, for persons of age, which is the audience for this podcast, I'm going to assume that this is true for lots of us because it's true for me. I think we're very interested in where we've been, what we've done, and what the overall picture of our life is. Have we been on track? What's ahead? What more do we need to do to complete this journey that we've been making for so many years? And it seems like this could be an amazing tool for that.
Incredible. And you're making me think actually of a client who's in her early 60s. And this is the shift from what you're talking about, family systems and our personality, which are kind of formed by the mirrors that we experience with our family. And we may not see ourselves clearly. So she was feeling really stuck creatively, stuck in her career, depressed, heavy, overweight, just really not okay with herself. And she always, I'm just going to jump in the layout. When she pulled the cards, what we saw was the image of Aphrodite over and over and over in so many of the cards. And it was so clear that she was drawn to beauty and to the divine feminine, but hadn't had that mirrored to her. In her family, somehow the feminine was overlooked. She learned how to be highly functional, how to be like a corporate person, but hadn't seen that it's the divine feminine that is her, if you wish, her mentor, her goddess, her totem, her archetype that's actually been working through her. And as we worked through each of the cards, it was like a psychic chiropractic shift. It just kept shifting her. And there were synchronicities in the numbers, in how many of these cards related to each other. It completely shifted her so she could see the mirror of who she actually is. And that just gave her superpowers. She took off in her career. She, could see the beauty in herself. She dressed herself differently. She owned herself.
That's an enormous shift. And I loved what you said about the personality being so much a product and a result of how that family relates to us, that mirror that they hold up for us, and that it may not be accurate. It may say a lot more about the family's needs, the family's distress, the family's agenda than our core essence. So you help that woman unite. I won't even say reunite because it sounds like she never had united. So she united with who she was and who she was intended to be. And what you're saying is she also could see how she'd use those qualities almost without realizing it all the way along. And now she got to give them their due and bring them right up front in her clothing and her aspect in the world.
Exactly.
That sounds wonderful. Okay, another story, because I love these stories. I always love stories.
Well, I did just have one, but I'm not sure I can easily encapsulate it. But I'll just say that I just worked with somebody. She was afraid of something medical going on, and it was medical around the womb. So she was looking, she's a therapist and very bright, very insightful, and knew that something was going on in her lineage around the feminine and mother. And when I asked her, what I'm asking people is to consult their deeper unconscious for what they need by asking, how many cards do you need to look at? How are they laid out? And then I have them draw, or I draw a diagram of what they're seeing in their mind's eye. I think she had 7 cards. And this is the way that the unconscious just lays out on the table. So we're seeing again the deeper self. And when I asked her to diagram what she saw with these 7 cards, and I said, make an X or a rectangle for each card, she made a heart. So she had these little hearts all over her paper. And then I would ask her one by one, which one attracts your attention and can you name it? And so we're really creating a map that's straight out of her unconscious. It's her blueprint that's lying out on the table. But when she pulled the cards, there were so many little hearts in all of the cards. And again, there were many images of the Divine Mother from mythology, Demeter, from the tarot, the High Priestess, or the Empress, who's archetypically, she's pregnant. There were just so many images, and she was really needing to see that she's being guided by this divine feminine, this sense of the mother. And it just put her in touch with, again, like you said, what she's been doing her whole life. She could really see that she's been doing this work on healing the mother-daughter her whole life. And through her work, and that she wasn't off track. And it even helped her to shift because her parents were the cards. Like, yeah, careful, but there was a bear in one of the cards. Now, I don't know what that means, but her mother's maiden name was Bear. And and then there was a particular detail that represented the father. So her mother and her father were there, and she could see they're cheering me on. They may be in our relationship on this surface level. It's still really difficult, but really at a deeper level, they are supporting my evolution and my being a healer of this family lineage.
Well, that's exactly what I was hoping you would say, because I know that when we really get on track, we are healing the family in all directions generationally. We heal the past. It changes from being this sad or dark kind of history to something that can be used. The experiences, the events can be used to help others, to understand ourselves more deeply, to be of service in the world. So it changes the meaning of all those and lifts them way, way up from darkness into light, because now they generate light for everybody involved, whether they're still here in the body or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Can I circle back to the question about how does it change me as a therapist?
Yes.
Because I'm training therapists in this. And what I see so many people go through as therapists, first of all, there's a high degree of burnout because we're dealing with existential anxiety in the general population in a way that is so much bigger than it used to be with climate change and things. And therapists are pretty overwhelmed. And burnout's a very common problem. But I think part of the problem is I'm seeing in these therapists exactly what my journey was, which is that they feel like they have had to work in these corporate settings as therapists, let's say for a hospital, or in being licensed. They feel like they have to separate a part of themselves that is intuitive, that is spiritual. And I think about it as the magical child, that we've all been magical children. And then I'll speak for myself, I had to adapt to a culture that's very strongly patriarchal and rationally minded, um, and prioritize my intellect instead of the intuition, the spiritual, the knowing, this deep knowing. So when I'm training therapists, they just have these huge ahas, like it's so liberating. Oh, I can integrate all of me in my work. I don't have to be marginalizing parts of me. I don't have to be too careful and shut off. And that's going to benefit the client to be able to integrate all of them as well. And I think we're at a very powerful time where there's a reason that tarot and psychology is trending, because we're needing to integrate where we've been with this incredible development with science and technology with the ancient ways of knowing. And quantum physics understands, they've been able to prove what I'm seeing in therapy, which is that there's no separation between the observer and the observed. There's no separation between psyche or consciousness and matter. The cards were dealt. And we see it over and over and over. And that's a whole different sense of wholeness that happens.
I mean, it's the only way to achieve wholeness, because setting aside that kind of mystical part of life and experience is setting aside something that human beings have been in touch with forever. And it's only recently that it's been so denigrated, that everything is out to prove that's not what's important. What's important is what you can measure and what can be proven in a laboratory. I'm reading a book right now called The Light Eaters, which is about the debate about consciousness in plants. And so much of the emphasis is, oh, we're not doing this weird thing over here. We're measuring everything. And I'm thinking, okay, but the fact that you're measuring it is also a factor in what you're seeing, what you're supposedly proving. It's not neutral because you're rejecting this one aspect of existence. Everything's vibration, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that synchronicity is a result of vibration. So I don't know where I'm going with this on and on statement, but I love the idea of integrating this into therapy and offering that integration to clients, to other therapists. I did some training once upon a time for people who had to do some training to keep their medical licenses. And I was talking to doctors, and I was talking about some things that were from my book, Why Me, Why This, Why Now. And one male doctor got up and really insulted me and left the room. But the women doctors came up to me afterward and said, I have been so hungry for this. Thank you so much for talking about this other dimension of what we're trying to do, how we're trying to heal. And it's sad, I think, that there is this male model for rejecting that. I know not all men do that, obviously, but it is kind of what's shown as how you do this thing. You push that away and you pay attention to the numbers. And that's happening more and more in medicine. And I don't think it's always a good thing. I mean, I really don't think it's always a good thing. Okay, back to you.
Oh no, I would love to pick up on what you're saying. By the way, I love your book. I love the book. It just spoke to my heart about, really being able to connect to what's meaningful underneath somebody's experience and how we're creating these experiences so we can grow and learn. Anyway, loved it.
Thank you.
I do want to pick up on some of the things you're saying, because you said a number of things. First of all, the synchronicity. I believe that synchronicity is reality, and that each time we have a powerful synchronicity, doing psychology is the study of soul. By definition, psychotherapy is the treating of soul by definition, but we don't teach soul in our education or practice it, in our medicine. And the roots of medicine go back to calling upon the gods to have the ability to heal somebody. So when there's a powerful synchronicity in doing therapy, I believe that moment is incredibly healing. First of all, it's a shock, it's awakening. Oh my gosh, my inside matches my outside. All of a sudden, there is this integration of, as I said, psyche and matter, dreaming and waking. I'm not split up. I'm having this holistic experience. And I believe every time we have a powerful synchronicity, we are breaking through that illusion of separation that has caused so many of us to be alienated and bereft. So I think bringing synchronicity as a tool in psychotherapy is incredibly powerful. The other thing that you brought up is the whole thing of doctors and the medical model. And I'm a dream worker, and the medical model, going back to the roots of healing, was Asclepius, who would come in a dream to heal people. We're asking the deeper archetypal, the higher consciousness to come in through these archetypal images to help people tap into that part of themselves that's already whole. I worked with a doctor for a very long time. And this is the thing when we're talking about the patriarchy, is it burdens the masculine, our doctors, as well as the feminine. And doctors end up with this heavy burden of feeling that they have to carry the idea of being gods, and then they can't say they don't know, or they get very defensive. So I was working with a doctor who's very rare, Dr. John Horton, and he would spend an hour with his clients to find out, well, what's going on in your life that's causing the stress that is behind this illness. And then he would send them to me, and we'd do a therapy session, and it would get at exactly what was going on. And then with the client's permission, he and I would discuss it, and that would help this whole illness now to become a teacher.
Because when we reject a part of ourselves, and when we're suffering because of that, it does lead to illness. The body starts kind of screaming at us that we have to change something because we're not getting the subtle hints. And one of the things I hear you saying, Lauren, is you've learned to pay attention to the subtler and subtler, and so do your clients from this process. They tune in instead of pushing away these little voices, these hints. I remember a woman who had heard this man speak, and he had spoken a lot about his higher power. And she went up to him afterward and she said, I have trouble with the God thing. And he said to her, oh, God's just another word for coincidence, which is synchronicity. What a lovely way to think about that. If the word God has been ruined for you by whatever, your family, religion, whatever, yeah, just that coming together of things that it doesn't make sense that they came together, but they did on your behalf.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, I think about it in all different kinds of ways, whether it's our inner wisdom, the deepest part of ourselves that knows who we are, or it's our divine spark inside, or it's the universe that has a universal intelligence, which was what Einstein was looking at, that is participating with us with events to help us grow and evolve. And I've been doing this 40 years and I never cease to be in awe. So every session is exciting to me. Every session I can tell you I want to talk about carefully, because I want to protect people's anonymity, but I never cease to be amazed. And that's the other thing, is that I'm not tired. I'm more passionate than ever about the work.
And that's how we should feel about our work. Our work should be love made visible. And it is when we're right on track with ourselves, our path, and what we're here to offer the world. So before we finish today, Lauren, let's look at some images of these amazing cards that you use there. How many decks do you have? Because I know you have a lot for people.
About 70.
Okay, 70 decks.
And,
wow. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, all these different representations of certain archetypal themes, right?
Absolutely. And I was going to say also because, you know, we're working with a sensationally silver population, and we're dealing with other issues at this stage, issues of losing loved ones, partners, parents. We're also in a place where there's a lot of upheaval in our world, and we've been dealing with environmental upheaval. This is the work I've been doing the last few years, which is helping people to navigate loss and upheaval. Because again, when you get spiritual, I don't want to just say spiritual because some people aren't comfortable with that, but nature. You bring in nature's perspective, it will come right into the cards. And what they always see is balance. I have clients coming in overwhelmed and distressed because of what's going on in their personal life or in the world. And then they pull the cards and they see that there is a complete narrative, even if they've used 4 different decks, and there's balance and symmetry. And by the end of the session, they find resilience. They're able to hold it. So if I can get this, I'll show a very powerful session around the LA fires, the images that came up. You know, people losing their communities, their homes, their sense of connection because the community's gone, their sense of safety. So this is a story about somebody who wasn't directly in the fires, but we're all affected by it. We were all affected by what happened in Los Angeles. And so this is the layout that she did in a group that I run. And what was amazing to me, this is a woman who is a therapist. She is a psychedelic medicine therapist. She's brilliant. She's also highly empathic. And this was the layout that she did after the LA fires. And I saw a lot of fires coming into the layouts because whatever we're dealing with collectively, that's going to show up too. And if you look at the bottom 3 of these cards, the one on the left is a goddess holding flames. The one in the middle is a goddess figure holding ash and smoke. And the one on the right is an upside down woman in prayer in a burnt out landscape. So she was holding all 3 aspects of fire through this sense of power to transmute the pain. And then this card above, which says rebirth, is a psychedelic image with a woman in it upside down. And to me, what this says is, yes, we're all affected by what's happening in the world, but this helps us to learn how to hold it and actually transmute it through ourselves. And by our holding it and working with it and healing our ability to be resilient, we also help the world. And I believe that that card above, which is that psychedelic card, has to do with a paradigm shift, a shift in consciousness, which I think we're all dealing with right now. And I think that's actually what's exciting about what's happening right now, is that there's a consciousness shift in which we're no longer feeling separate. We are not separate from nature. We're not separate from the world. But what that also means is our inner work can transform the outer world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Lauren, I just am so grateful for what you've been saying, what you've been teaching us, that we, through greater understanding, are agents of healing for ourselves and for what's around us and for everything. I truly believe that each one of us is a cell in the body of humanity. And what isn't good for anybody isn't good for us. We don't want that in our own body, our physical body. We don't want one part to be not doing well. It all needs to be in harmony and working together. And that's the new age lesson, that we have to have group consciousness. We're out of time. I can't thank you enough. I'm just so grateful. I hope all of you will look at this podcast so you can see those incredible images in that spread that Lauren referred to. they're extremely evocative and perfect. They're very, very, very perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored and delighted to have this
Well,
conversation.
it's my pleasure, and I'm speaking for my audience. I hope it's everyone's pleasure. I suspect it is. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. We'll see you next time. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver.